Here's NFL Pick 6 Show, Week 17, sponsored by Thrive. We'll tell you about Thrive later on the show. If you're listening to us live, watching us on the YouTube, we're coming a little bit early. So, jumping in early because Daigle's got to watch Giannis Antetokounmpo do his thing tonight in basketball tonight. Of course, that's John Daigle from 4 for 4, Bet Spurts. We got Rich Hribar, the very svelte Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis. Daigle, 3 o'clock show. I was checking the YouTube comments last week, and every once in a while I got to pop in there and see if anybody has anything to say interesting. And Luis Jose Lopez says, quick question. You guys will shoot at night because everyone is just drinking. Everybody's drinking on the show. And you confirm this? Are we drinking in the afternoon now? Are we day drinking? What are we doing now?
I confirm, to defend y'all, it's me who's always drinking on the show, and I know it. And no, it's only 2 p.m. here in Chicago now. So no alcohol, just coffee, but we'll jump into the wine right after this. I'm sure to pregame for Giannis being in town, which is, again, I would love to tell you it's a serious matter, but no, we're just recording early because it's week 17 and I want to go see Giannis. That's it. I'm greedy. A man wins the movie contest and suddenly thinks he can pick everything.
I defended you. I think it's a justifiable reason. Absolutely. And we have no issues. We're flexible here, obviously. I'm missing the UCF Duke Military Bowl game right now. Proud of UCF. It's not exactly a national championship game, but UCF is playing Duke, I believe, in their second quarter. 10-3, the Blue Devils.
I bet it, man. So, I've got it on, and I got an eye on it. We're keeping an eye on it.
Did you bet Duke?
I bet the under, like a square.
What was the total? I don't even know, but it's 10-3.
62.5. So we're pacing all right, but it's college football. You never know, man.
There you go. All right. Hribar, how are things in your world? Everything all good?
Good, man. Holidays were good. We're about to be over to a new year. I've submitted the week 17 worksheet, so I have one left, and it's a condensed version. So I'm feeling a little bit lighter. We're almost there, man. We're close, and weird stuff starting to happen, right? Like we got the Derek Carr news before the show. We're at that stage of the season where just like teams are done. We're going to see some guys sit out, all kinds of weird stuff.
Injury reports would not have mattered if we waited another 5 hours to do this show. No. Because it's just going to be chaos this week.
Daigle, did you take your victory lap? Because I saw you put a tweet out maybe like 2 hours ago basically saying this looks fishy with the Raiders. Their team total has dipped drastically. And then like half hour later, the news came out that Carr was benched in lieu of Jarrett Stidham. We did also see, for what it's worth, Colt McCoy did pass his concussion protocol, expected to play week 17. But you were on that. Did you happen to wager any American dollars in any way? Or
no dollars wagered. Also, no victory laps in this house. We've done this job too long to know victory laps only come back to bite you in the end. So none of that. But I did note it in the recap podcast that we saved at the 4 for 4 feed, the most accurate podcast, until Monday afternoon, citing that everyone pretty much knew that Derek Carr had that injury out. Like if after the Super Bowl, if he could not pass a physical, his money was actually guaranteed because he was injured in the last 2 games. So it's something the Raiders are clearly trying to avoid now. And it sounds like with him having a no trade clause, we're just at the time of the year, like Rich said, to where we already know he's going elsewhere next year.
Yeah, I mean, according to Twitter, he's already on the Colts. Is that what the smart money is?
Well, to be fair, like, because I had a Colts fan get my mentions when I tweeted something about it, and I said, listen, buddy, keep it in the holster. Like, we're going to make the same joke for every mid-level QB in the Colts. Like, wait, Baker Mayfield to have a turn. Like, whatever mid-level quarterback's available, we're going to put him on the Colts. So just slow down. Like, we're just having fun here.
He might be too young for the Colts. We get a couple more years. I don't know.
We'll true.
See. Stay tuned. 13-gamer, no longer a 10-game slate, 13 games. Of course, no Thursday night game, no Sunday night game, no Monday night game. Kind of a bummer. I was hoping we can get Buffalo and Cincy on the main slate. That looks like a fun one for sure. Main slate, only one game above 50 as far as the total. I should say one game above 48 as far as total. We'll be talking about it. It is the return, John. The Lions are home. So the Lions they're sponsoring the podcast once again. They're back to their rightful spot. First game on the slate, the Bears in Detroit, in the Dome, 52.5. This is it's their rightful spot. But welcome back to the Lions. We're talking about the Lions again. John, lead the way.
Our pick six line returns, probably because all of the falling knives across the rest of the league, but also you look up and the Lions have a 29.5-point team total. They are back indoors, where Jared Goff has, of course, thrown 20 touchdowns this year compared to only 6 on the road. Goff, who surprisingly did spike that QB2 finish overall against the Panthers this past game because he was a negative game script for basically the last 3 quarters, but 353 touchdowns, has now been a top 5 quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games. And again, we're back indoors. The real question here is, can the Bears carry their weight? Will Justin Fields play? Again, I don't even think waiting till Wednesday night, we would have had to answer that, considering if he had gotten closer in the polar weather that I refused to go to, even it being free to go to that Saturday morning game on Christmas weekend, there was no way in hell you're going to catch me out there. And I can't believe people bought tickets to it. But in spraining his ankle in that game and only rushing for 11 yards against Buffalo, we do have to question, like, if he's even limited, will they just bench him overall for the next 2 weeks, since the number 1 overall pick is still right there for the taking for them as the Texans continue to play better every single game. So whether we get some push from the Bears or not sure, but I am confident in playing the Lions offense in a variety of ways, including golf, regardless.
Is Amon-Ra St. Brown's at the first place you want to start? You want to start as far as the running game if you're going to, roster yourself some Lions. 29 team total, one of the biggest on the board this week.
And St. Brown, of course, only 6 touchdowns now in the year because it just seems like Thanos has it out for him, just perpetually, inevitably getting tackled at the 1-yard line every single game, which also, because that has not happened the past few weeks, Jamal Williams now you see with less than 6 fantasy points in 3 consecutive games as well, since he doesn't catch passes. Yeah, Amon-Ra is the place where we start. I'm not expecting Shane Zylstra to have 3 touchdowns again out of nowhere. And then beyond that, Jamal Williams is also battling this injury he has. He was limited as of Wednesday, I believe, last I checked. And so DeAndre Swift, single-digit touches in 6 of his last 8 games. Even though he's always rostered in tournaments because people keep citing his upside and getting ahead of it, of course he becomes chalky if Jamal Williams is out. If not, I may still find a way to pivot off of Goff and just play the touchdown game that I know Rich hates with Jamal Williams.
Yeah, Rich, jump back in here as far as the Lions. Amon-Ra, your guy, everybody's guy at this point this season. He's going to be chalky once again. Lions still playing for something. Monster total in the dome, 24% chance to make the playoffs, according to Nate Silver in 538. How do you get away from Amon-Ra? Like, it's in cash games. Like, I feel like he's one of the first players you put in. I assume we'll have salary by the end of the week. I'm guessing you're still on board as far as Amon-Ra?
Yeah, in cash games especially. I mean, he had 10 catches against them earlier in the year. Bears allowing 10.4 yards per target to opposing slot receivers. That's 30th in the league, 30th in touchdown rate. I mean, he is, to his peers, he is a little different because he's more like kind of apex Keenan Allen. I mean, he's only averaging 6.3 air yards per target, doesn't get any deep targets downfield, so he does have to run hot on volume to get there. He's that kind of player. I think if you do want to get different in tournaments, I think DJ Shark is right back in play here. Kind of ran into a couple bad matchups the last couple weeks, but still got there last week. I mean, he has 29.4% of the team air yards in his games played. It's allowed him to hit 90 yards in 3 of his past 4 games. And the Bears are allowing a 40% completion rate on throws 20 yards or further downfield. That's where 32% of Shark's targets come. So definitely some upside, I think, with Shark, where he's priced too, if you want to, go that route and get in with some doubles like we did a couple weeks ago when they faced the Vikings.
And I don't necessarily blame the young players for the Bears, but it's just clear that since they traded both Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn, that's when the crumbling really started happening here. And now since that time, since week 9, 152 rushing yards allowed per game, a league high 32 points per game, when no other team is allowing over 30 in that time as well. It's just the fact that the Bears defense, you can get them however you want, which makes the Lions offense, the way we stack it, so intriguing.
The Jameson Williams thing, I just pulled up his snap count, and it's just not happening, I guess, with 11%.
Slow playing it. He's, they've got Shark as a bridge. They're just giving him a couple shot plays a game, a couple deep routes, and if he gets a target, he gets a target. But I think it's commendable how they've handled the situation. They have a luxury, right?
Is it an ACL he's coming off of? It's ACL, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I guess if they want to push it for the playoffs, or I suppose they think that they have competent receivers, so it's not necessary. Is that also part of it as well?
Yeah.
Okay. The Swift thing, that's also kind of sort of, the Swift, Williams, Jackson, the 3-headed monster, I guess we'll call it. Do you want to mess with that, Rich? You want to bet on the likes of St. Brown, falling on, the 1-yard line and Williams siphoning a touchdown or two, and that's basically how you get there with Jamal. It's hard to predict.
The fantasy community has long not needed much to play DeAndre Swift. We've seen it repeatedly, right,
Yes.
over the course of the season. Like, all I need is like a crack in the door, because it used to be for the last month, right? It's been, hey, DeAndre Swift's not on the injury report. Like, that's been the argument. It's like, cool, well, he wasn't on it last week either. And then it's like, hey, DeAndre Swift played the most snaps he played since week 1. Like, oh, Jamal Williams is hurt. Like, we've like, all we've needed is like a little crack in the door, and everyone just keeps going right back to DeAndre Swift because we know where the upside lies. So like this week, he's going to easily get there. His price against this Bears defense, like the Bears just allowed 250 rushing yards to the Bills. They're allowing 149 rushing total yards per game to running backs, about 18 touchdowns to running backs. Like, we don't need much to get there. Like, he's going to be really popular, and DraftKings has had him kind of just like priced in that dead zone. So like, people have always been looking to like shop in that area. They don't need much push here to get to DeAndre Swift.
John, how do you feel about Swift? Especially if he gets some ownership. Again, he's, if they're up 10, right? Let's say the Lions are up 10 in the start of the fourth quarter. Is it Swift grinding it out? Is it Jackson grinding it out? It's most likely maybe Jamal. We'll see. His snap count has gone down as well. Or is it just a combination of those? There's only a way of reading that.
And I think Jamal's snap count went down solely because he got injured this past game. If it's simply 10, I think they're still mixing all three up. It really just depends on where ownership comes in on them, honestly, because I could see myself maybe getting to Swift, especially 5-3 on DraftKings. But honestly, again, $5K on DraftKings, more expensive on FanDuel. I think Jamal Williams is, even though he's not going to catch passes, I still think he's a pretty solid player.
Yeah. Rich, you talked about the Lions the Bears getting roasted on the ground last week. I think the Lions got roasted more. I feel like they got roasted more.
They undid just about all the goodwill they have built up for everyone citing like how good they've been against the bye since the bye against the run. I think that's all out the window now.
Is the truth somewhere in the middle? Like, they can't be
Probably,
that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't be that good either. And the Bears.
And Carolina's like legit just good at running the football too. Like, there's some teams that we know are just going to run the ball every week, right, and run it well. Like, Atlanta's been that team all year. Like, Atlanta has they have a crummiest matchup, right, and like they're going to run it right because the scheme. Carolina's really turned into that team, especially under Steve Wilkes. Like, they're running the ball on everybody pretty much.
I was going to put them as our third game because picking a third game this week was really hard, but I refuse to acknowledge the Bucs. We do not talk about the Bucs.
That's a good call. I can second that for sure. The Bears are going to want to run the ball with Fields, without Fields, whatever this quarterback is. And we saw the Lions, at least last week, they were vulnerable to it. They're solid before that. Truth, somewhere in the middle, but that's a wide gap for sure. If we're running it back, this is the biggest total on the board here, Rich. It's hard to get excited about a lot of the pieces in Chicago. I guess Montgomery is the clear and obvious run back, but also Montgomery, they're going to be a touchdown dog, which theoretically, generally, not the ideal spot to run back with running backs. But like, okay, do you want to play some Claypool or some Pringle or some Pettis who sucked out with a touchdown last week?
What else?
It's not good. I guess you can play some Cole Kmet. You can do that too.
He's really the only guy, right? I mean, because we saw with Khalil Herbert come back. I mean, we saw 20 touches from David Montgomery, but there was a dip, in his touch count and his snap count, share backfield touches. He still had 71% of the backfield touches, but he was at 88%, 85% prior. That's always been the David Montgomery we want, right? Like, the locked into like he's going to get every touch roll. And now Herbert has a game under his belt. We might see him get back to closer to that split that they were in. I mean, when these teams played early in the year, it was a dead 50-50 split. They each had 10 touches, and no one really got there in that game. I mean, they combined for 101 yards in that game. So kind of like you said, it's a tricky spot here for the Bears because we don't really want to play any of these guys, right? And I tongue-in-cheek said Kmet. I mean, he's kind of there. He had the 2 touchdowns against them early in the year. Like, tight ends continually get there against the Lions. But, like, are you ever excited to, like, just, like, plug Kmet in your lineups?
No.
The yardage really isn't there for him on a weekly basis. If you don't get the touchdowns, like, are you ever getting there? It's just really tough. But they have the Lions, that is, have a lot of league high 10.2% touchdown rate to opposing tight ends, 8.2 yards per target, which is 26th if you want to go that route. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to really glom on to any individual Bears pieces. You just hope that they find a way to keep doing it like they do kind of every week. I mean, opening drive of the game last week, I'm like, man, they just went right down the field on the Bills. Mm-hmm. Dante Pettis catches a touchdown. You're like, oh my goodness, like this Bears team, like they just got a good scheme. It's working. And then did absolutely nothing the rest of that game.
That's why if Fields is in, even with that injury, if he's in, I assume that means he's not going to be limited. And he's pretty hot on this slate if he plays, because I think everyone else would be scared for recency bias and because of the injury. Again, like those 11 yards didn't help us out, since he's still now 196 yards shy of Lamar Jackson's single season rushing record. Probably can't get it. But also remember, he had 142 touchdowns last time rushing against this Lions defense when they played. So I'd be interested in Fields. And Kmet, like Rich said, his 5 touchdowns still were in that 3-game stretch. No other touchdown in any other game around that time. But he's in that weird spot on FanDuel, like 5,300. People can get to that. The Freiermuth zone, the 4,500 on DraftKings, where no one ever gets to, that one's like where it's sneaky, because either everyone punts or goes all the way up to Andrews or Kelsey or Hawkinson now.
Yeah, Hawkinson's been he's broken 2 slates this year, and I heard somebody say what is 17 week. If you would scale it out, Minnesota, like 110 catches or something like that for a season long. He's been an awesome acquisition for them, and kind of a bargain if you've been playing him of late. But yeah, we'll talk about him on DK soon enough. Actually, that's in our next game. We got anything else here, John? Like your favorite run back on Chicago? Let's say Fields doesn't go and you're forced to run somebody back on Chicago. Who would it be? Is it just Kmet by default?
Unfortunately, I think it'd have to be Kmet and just play the touchdown game on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I'm probably looking elsewhere. I maybe even play naked. I maybe even play Lions defense instead and correlate it that way if you do think like the Bears are banged up.
We're just going to ignore Shane Zylstra at 2.8K.
I mean, the one thing that Shane Zylstra showed that's been constant is the Lions, when they get in like inside the 5 and inside the 10, like they use those tight ends, man. I mean, since they traded Hawkinson, their tight ends have 27 total catches, but they have 7 touchdowns. And 5 of them are inside the 5-yard line, just one longer than 7 yards, which was the Brock Wright one against the Jets. But like that's like a part of their offense, legit. Like they're throwing the tight ends down there. Which
is amazing considering they were not throwing to TJ Hawkinson down there.
Yeah. TJ Hawkinson was holding back Shane Zylstra, apparently.
No one's expecting it from those guys.
But we mentioned golf and passing. Would we play golf in tournaments? Is that something we're into doing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, these teams played what? They had a 61-point game earlier in the year. Goff in that game threw for 9 yards per pass attempt. He completed 73% of his passes. They just gave all the touchdowns were rushing touchdowns, right? And that's the whole crux when you go to like Goff's road splits. Goff's been fine on the road. It's just they have a bunch of rushing touchdowns. The Lions have scored a bunch of points on the road. Like people always keep citing their like stats on the road. Like they scored 31 on the road against the Bears, 31 on the road against the Giants. Like it's all been kind of opponent driven. Like they played at New England when they had nobody healthy and got shut out. They played the Jets on the road, and they played the Cowboys when Amon-Ra got hurt 10 snaps in the game. Like those are your road splits.
And the theme this week, we talk about it every week, but really this week, DraftKings and took Christmas off and just didn't touch anyone's price. Unless you're Richie James, who everyone played, they just didn't care at all. So Goff is still just 5,600 perpetually this week.
We have Minnesota facing the Packers. 48.5 is the total. Green Bay, 3-point favorite here. Green Bay fighting for their lives as far as making the playoffs. They still do have a chance. Minnesota, I believe, is essentially locked into their spot. They have a mathematical shot to get that first round bye, but almost definitely it's going to go to Philadelphia. We'll see on that. Stay tuned. Yeah, I'll throw this to you, Rich, as far as opening this up. Minnesota versus Green Bay. A little bit concerned as far as Jones kind of beat up last week, was on the trainer's table for a bit. He seemed to come in a game kind of hobbling as well. We don't really know where he's going to be. We assume, I guess, for the sake of the conversation, assume he's good to go. But just worth noting, Wednesday afternoon, talking about the Packers, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, this game is it's the Vikings, right? Like the Vikings are like the Lions, like for us, right? Like they play in these games every week. They can't stop anybody. They've got electric players on offense. Since week 10, the Packers are allowing a league high 6.3 yards per play. The Vikings are 30th over that same span. So we're expecting there to be scoring. And the Vikings can't run the football anymore. I mean, since week 11, they're averaging just 3.4 yards per carry on running back carries. Only the Houston Texans are worse. The Packers would seem to be a matchup to invite them to be able to do that. But we thought about that against the Giants last week, right? And they've just really swerved into being pass heavy. Kirk Cousins has thrown 143 passes the past 3 weeks. They are 6% above pass rate expectation of it. So it's not just all game script, like them just kind of trying to come back against the Colts in that 33 nothing halftime game. They're just throwing the ball, man. They're just winging it around. And you look at, their receivers. We talked about TJ Hawkins a little bit. TJ Hawkinson is 4th in the NFL in routes run since getting traded. Like there's just a massive value here for this offense. Justin Jefferson is 1st. Adam Thielen is 3rd. Like they're just throwing the ball a lot, and that's what we like. They don't stop anybody, and they've got an efficient passing game, right? So the question is, is that going to help Aaron Rodgers? Because we've had Aaron Rodgers now in multiple spots.
He's trying to get on Sunday too.
He's faced the Lions. He's faced the Bears. He's faced the Titans. He faced the Dolphins again this past week, and like he's not getting there. Like this pass game's not getting there. They're not putting up any type of a punch in terms of scoring a lot of points, and it's kind of bogged these games down. So we need the Packers to kind of be electric here too, and we're hoping the Vikings are just bad enough to allow it.
It's so.
What do you think is go ahead.
Say it's so frustrating too because Brian Daigle changed his game plan and allowed Daniel Jones to throw 42 times, knowing the Vikings secondary is the weakness and where you attack them. But again, like Rodgers, the fact he hasn't reached 300 yards in any game this year. We keep, like Justin Herbert in fantasy, not in real life, but in fantasy, we keep wish casting like the Packers offense into something they just aren't. And they have battled a lot of injuries. Christian Watson, DMP as of Wednesday as well, which takes a lot of pop out of this offense and may lead to some cheap plays for us to stuff in between Randall Cobb, Romeo Doubs, list goes on and on. But yeah, it's just the fact that the Packers offense, although they have been much better in EPA per dropback, top 5 since week 10, like for fantasy, it translates to nothing.
It feels like a great spot for Watson if he can go, if he's a full go. Question for both of you guys. I'm kind of framing this, and Rich sort of set this up, and all the good matchups we've seen this year for Rodgers. What's the highest? Give me his highest DK score of the week. Give me the number you think his highest DK score has been the entire season for 1 week. What do you? I'll let John go first.
His highest finish was QB7, and that's the only time he's finished inside the top 11 all year. I think it was week 7. I could be wrong, but I will go 26.5 points.
Okay, yeah, you're speaking season long term. Which, by the way, I have a season long question in the YouTube chat that I want to get to in a second. What's up, YouTube chat? Thank you for joining us now. Hit that like button. Let us know in the comment section if you want us to come back for the playoffs, because right now it's teetering. We're on the fence. We don't know. Let us know in the comment section. Hit that like button as well. Rich, C26, you want to raise it? You want to go lower? We want to go Price's Right style. You think he's way too high? The biggest score for Aaron Rodgers, DK scoring this year.
Well, he doesn't have a 300-yard game, right?
No.
Correct.
Yeah, so he didn't get the bonus. So, yeah, I would say it's probably a little lower. I would say it's probably a little bit lower than that. He was what? Maybe the Titans game, or is it the Cowboys game or the Titans game?
It was the Cowboys game.
It's got to be the Cowboys.
Right.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Cowboys.
So, yeah, probably a little bit lower, maybe right around 20.
Yeah, 20.36 is his biggest output this season. Just worthless. Just if you X them out every single week, you're ahead of the game.
I mean, he's thrown for 222 yards per game. That's the lowest in his career as a starter. His 6.8 yards per pass attempt. He only has 1 year as a starter lower than that. And there's still probably room to get there, especially if Christian Watson doesn't play. I mean, he's just the offense, like Daigle said, like they're in efficiency metrics, they've been good, and they're scoring points, but they're scoring them slow, and they're not like they don't have a lot of electric plays outside of Christian Watson if he doesn't play. One thing that though will be interesting about this matchup though is the Vikings have thrown a lot at the walls here. Like they've really tried to like fix their defense. Like they're trying different things, and they've really switched to playing a ton of man coverage, and it's made it even worse. The past 3 weeks they played man coverage on 32% of opponent passing plays. That's the 4th highest rate in the league. Prior to that, they had played man coverage at just 11% of passing plays. It was 31st in the league. And they've been getting absolutely crushed. That's significant because it does open up like a guy like Allen Lazard who has significant splits versus man versus zone. He's been targeted on 27% of his routes against man coverage, just 15% against zone coverage. And we saw those splits in play again last week against the Dolphins. He dropped a bad one and was open for another one that Rodgers missed him on. And then Lazard has run 250 routes this season with Watson off the field, and he's been targeted on 22% of those compared to just 18% with Watson in the game. So there is an opportunity, I think, here for Lazard to kind of go overlooked. I mean, he's clearly the guy that's going to be on the field the most here. And I think a lot of people are going to immediately just go to Romeo Doubs.
If Watson doesn't play, I think people will be in. I suppose that's going to matter. And again, that's a question we'll answer later on in the week. But yeah, Romeo's 4.7 on Deacon, Lazard 5.4, Watson 5.9. Season long question in chat, and like you guys are season long. You know, you're obviously well honed in on that. I can't believe this is a question. I kind of sort of somewhat understand it, but come on, what are we doing? Question here in chat from Richie. I'll ask you, John. Feel free to disagree, Rich. Goff or Mahomes in the finals? What are we doing? You play Mahomes. I know he's playing Denver, but what are we doing?
It's the only way to justify the question is that the last 3 weeks, it makes sense. Everyone panics. It's the playoffs. Everyone overreacts in the playoffs because you have to win. I get it. We're all worried about every little matchup. You don't overthink it. Play Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, anytime there's like a hot name like in the community, like last week it was Minshew. You know, I answered a ton of start-sit Minshew questions on my Sunday chat, and like people wanted to play like Josh. Like, do I play him over Josh Allen? Right? You know, because the weather was in play last week. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, it looks like we have no weather bullshit to deal with this week. Well, you know, fingers crossed. We're far away, but it looks like we're going to be okay. Even that Buffalo-Cincinnati game, it's like, what's the weather going to be like? It looks like we're trending well. So Good. It looks like we don't have to deal with that this week. But yeah, anytime there's like a hot buzzworthy name, sometimes it's a running back, sometimes it's a receiver. Like people are like, oh, well, I have to play that guy, right? Like he's the trendy play. And Goff's kind of in that mode right now. But yeah, I mean, listen, Patrick Mahomes just threw for 300 yards against the Broncos.
It also doesn't help that literally if your fantasy team was good, like if you were the number 1 seed last week because your team was good, you probably lost because every good player in fantasy was not good. Like it was murderer's row if you had players that mattered last week.
Also, if you watch the Broncos at Christmas, like they're done, man. They're not showing up. They ain't showing up to this game. Do you think they're going to Arrowhead and they're showing up?
That Jerry Jeudy might show up, but the rest of that's why we couldn't talk about that game either, because outside of Jerry Jeudy, try to get anywhere else in that game. Just try it.
14-point line. Yeah, of course they fired their coach as well, which, you know, that's the per league rules.
Dude, the linemen weren't even helping Russ up after sacks. Like it's done, man. It is toxic. It is real toxic there.
Baker they were Mayfield through sidelines, right? About like, why are you helping him up, basically?
Dude, Baker Mayfield threw like 2 incompletions. Cam Akers is running for 3 touchdowns. Like they're done, man.
18 of Baker's 28 throws were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and the Broncos just couldn't stop it. It was pathetic.
There are already stories out there about Russ getting cut, like his $250 million guarantee. This is year 1. I don't know how real that is. I'm not somebody that's like a salary cap savant, but like I know it's a big hit as far as cap wise. Is that a real thing, or are people just sort of like just throwing it out there for the sake of clicks?
It's definitely a real thing, and I don't want to pretend with certainty that Russ will be back, since like we've done this now the last couple of years with David Johnson getting traded, Todd Gurley getting cut, Jared Goff getting traded. Everyone says, AJ Brown getting traded. Everyone says like it can't happen.
These takes are always wrong.
It can always happen. Yes. Having said that, it would be a record. Whether if it happened since Matt Ryan's dead cap hit was $40.5 million, Russ is over double that if he get rid of him this year. And then Carson Wentz's contract was $28.5 million guaranteed that Washington took on for 1 year. Russ would clearly be 3x that. So it would be a record, but I'm definitely not saying it won't happen.
And the biggest thing with Russ is just now, like, how often has a guy like his age and having the year he had, like there will be some positive regression to the mean to his career, I'm sure, but like how often do you see like a 34-year-old quarterback just like brick and like come back, right? Like
he always kind of overachieved, right? He always kind of got more out of what he was, undersized, that kind of thing, and wasn't. I don't think he was a day 1 draftee out of Wisconsin or NC State. He went to both, right?
Both.
He had a great run, but it feels like he's a little bit slower, and whatever sort of edges he had are kind of gone. And shout out to Pete Carroll in Seattle for siphoning it. The trade they pulled off is spectacular. Go ahead.
I can't think about it all too much because, like, if we start getting into this time in August when we were trying to fit in Darrell Henderson to every lineup and just all the useless stuff that proves my life is meaningless from August to December. But I do think it's funny that like Now with Derek Carr gone after the end of the year, Russell Wilson, we'll see what happens there. The Chargers took until week 16 to even get to the playoffs. Like all those teams rebeefed to compete with the Chiefs, and not a single one of them was even close. Not even close.
As far as Minnesota, we kind of touched on them. How much are we prioritizing Hawkinson? Because a lot of people, especially depending on how tight the cap may or may not be, and we don't really know that until when Sunday rolls around with some surprise scratches and different wonkiness when the week 17 brings. But Rich, how much are we prioritizing Hawkinson? He's been spectacular so far for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think his performance has been a little oversold. I think it's been a lot volume driven. He's only averaging 6.1 yards per target since he joined the Vikings. It's just they're running a ton of routes, and he's found some targets as a byproduct. Last week was the first real spike week he had. He was just kind of like Minnesota Zach Ertz, right? That's when he went over there and was just getting a lot of opportunity, catching enough passes, and was by default that's going to make you a top 5 tight end like Zach Ertz was. But there wasn't really anything exciting. And then last week came along and it was all right, now the ceiling has all come together, right? But can you chase that? Packers only allowing 3.5 catches per game to tight ends. That's second in the NFL, 6.5 yards per target, 7th. They have a lot of touchdowns to tight ends though, if you want to chase that. But if Hawkins is going to be really popular and people are going to chase that, I think I'm going to leave that on the table too, especially at tight end. I'm never going to play the popular tight end ever.
And last week indoors, in a week where 3 or 4 games we talked about were due to weather. So Hawkinson at his relatively cheap salary, $6K at the position, was cheap on FanDuel as well. It made sense people got there as a run back with the Giants offense. But I mean, like Rich said, the 8 games with the Vikings, he's only averaging 14.3 fantasy points. So it may seem like a lot, but it's genuinely not like George Kittle, who's now killed us the last 2 weeks.
That's who knocked me out of my actually, I was in the championship. Our championship was 1 week earlier for the RotoGrinders final, but that's what gave me the final punch out there. Hawkinson, for what it's worth, FanDuel got the alert, 7K this week. So you got to pay up for Hawkinson on FanDuel. I thought I was being smart and cute last week in our 4-man that we run for the movie bet, and I had Taysom Hill. I thought that was the sharp play, and I was victory lapping when he scored his touchdown, and then Hawkinson had 2 touchdowns. Then Kittle, I think, had 2 touchdowns as well. They both smashed my Taysom play. But what I'm seeing right now, he'll be much more popular this week, Hawkinson, that is on DK at 5.4 than FanDuel at 7.
And Kittle's only 5.9 on DK. So, I mean, if the ownership is dramatically skewed towards Hawkinson, then you just go right back to Kittle.
Mm-hmm.
Early
because that total sinking, but the 49ers team total continues to increase. I don't think there's any doubt. We all know the 49ers are going to put up points this week. And so if everyone just says, positive game script, resting players, I think we can actually get a chance to sneak Kittle in there this week.
Yeah, and Kittle's been absolute supernova without Debo in his career. Obviously he faced Seattle, so people got there a couple weeks ago, but I had wrote about it in there too. It's his career splits. I mean, he now has been targeted on 29% of his routes and had 29% of the team targets in games with Debo Samuel on the sideline. 3.3 yards per route run without Debo on the field compared to just 1.9 yards per route run with Debo in the game for his career. 14 of his career touchdowns are without Debo Samuel on the field, just 8 with him on the field. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, he basically is that guy that we saw when he set the record, right? When he first set the record for yardage. That's basically where he's at now these last 2 weeks. And I doubt we see Debo again in this game because why push him? So,
is San Fran essentially locked in their spot? They really can't go up or down, more or less?
They can get the 2 seed, I believe, still, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Can they not get the 1 seed since the Eagles?
They have a 1% chance to get a first round bye.
Okay. Yeah. Because the Eagles need to win one of their next 2 games, which it sounds like why they're trying to rush Jalen Hurts back. But then also the Cowboys play first on Thursday, and the Cowboys can win out. And it depends what the Vikings and Commanders do. Also, why this game is interesting for the Vikings and Packers, because if the Eagles win, the Vikings don't really have a reason to play for higher seeding at all. So they play the afternoon game. So they actually may be motivated to take it a little easy.
Okay. So you're saying Minnesota might pump the brakes a little bit. They're playing at 4:30. If they have their eye on Philadelphia plays the Saints at 1. They should win.
The way I believe it, yes. I was sifting through everything over Christmas weekend and Monday, trying to get all the scenarios down. but it does seem like everyone's kind of just waiting on that first game for the Eagles. The only reason the Cowboys are motivated because they play first on Thursday. So they have to win and then just let the weekend take care of itself. The Cowboys needed 5 things to happen last week, and they all did. So like I know people say like, oh, it's out of possibility, or like you need a lot of luck to happen. Like teams are still playing for a lot of luck to happen. So
listen, the Vikings are trying to get Justin Jefferson this record.
That too. Yeah.
That's happening.
Yeah.
What does he need for the record? About 200 yards, something like that?
He needs like 230, right? Like,
yeah,
it's fewer than what he averages per game.
Yeah. By the way, for what it's worth, early optimals, and it's worth not a ton on a Wednesday afternoon, but it is interesting because we tend to see differently. DK has like real tight ends hitting the tight end spot. Hawkinson, Kelsey.
That never happened. Jesus, that's never happens.
Yeah, it's Hawkinson, Kelsey, Kittle, and Dallas Goedert. The first 4, basically all the ones hitting optimals are actually real tight ends on DK, which just of note. That's kind of interesting that I just kind of noticed with our
Albert
optimals.
Okwuegbunam's not hitting optimals.
He is not. Oh, I did see somebody just say Albert O season and like, hey, it's the long con, right? With the flop flag 17 weeks later.
Is he stone min? He has to be minimum.
Yeah,
right?
he's 25.
Yeah,
Okay.
is he in the player pool?
That's why he's hitting. That's why he's hitting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk
What
about you're not playing Judy, I guess you can talk yourself in the Albert O.
No, I'm not. We're not talking ourselves in Albert O. We aren't doing it. We aren't doing it.
Fair enough. We're done with Minnesota and Green Bay, I think. Let's talk about the Jets and Seattle. Oh, listen, you got anything else?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. What are we doing with the Packers backfield?
I think we're waiting, right? I assume.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess clarity. Yeah, if we. But Aaron Jones is going to be inactive.
Wait, you say inactive?
He won't be inactive.
Yes, but I think is that like they have a real chance to make the playoffs, and he's a gamer, whatever you want to call it. But is he actually going to play? And that's like reading the beats and like following stuff like that. I think he's going to play too, but I don't know how much he's going to play, and that makes him probably a fragile play. And if you want to consider AJ Dillon, I think that's certainly more in play. But again, everything's sort of up in the air, and I don't really know what we can say on a Wednesday afternoon. But feel free to add to that, John. But it's some guesswork now.
Even around Aaron Jones, Dillon has at least 3 targets in 4 consecutive games. They may not seem like much, but if we think he's going to get a bulk of the touches, because Aaron Jones, who has now been limited in consecutive games, would be limited again after having his ankle rolled on, I think Dillon probably becomes a better play if Aaron Jones is active than anything.
We got Brian in chat saying, should I bench Aaron Jones for Akers? And like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, unless Aaron Jones all of a sudden is a miracle in practice.
Unless you're like a super dog, unless you're a dog and like you feel like you have to chase like that 30-point outcome, like, I mean, Cam Akers is in a tremendous spot.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, also, he handled 15 to 17 running back touches. He has 80% of the team's running back touches the past 2 games. It would have been more against the Broncos if they just weren't up by 4 scores and benched him to rest him. Like, he would have gotten every single touch in that game.
He's got 6 touchdowns his past 4 games. Over that span, he's 4th among all running backs in success rate. He's 7th in rate of runs to go for a first down or touchdown. The Chargers. Yeah, man. I mean, I think you got to. I think that's where it is. I have him Akers higher than Aaron Jones in my rankings. I'm sure someone will pull that up, at some point, but then clip that. But
if Zach Moss can average 5.5 yards per carry against the Chargers, Cam Akers will be just fine.
All the season long guys are putting up in our chat, and they all have Akers.
I know we got to stop doing this. We have to stop answering start sits.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
We're setting a
slippery slope here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I just set it up, so I don't want Jacob to be swerved here, But now Travis Etienne versus Cam Akers instead of Aaron Jones. Now it's Akers versus Travis Etienne. Who's got to take on this one? Are we just riding Akers all the way?
Oh no, man, I'm playing Etienne.
Okay. Yeah, coach came out basically and said that like no game is worth nothing. I'm misquoting it. There was thought that the Jags, who basically have a game next week versus Tennessee, winner gets in. That they might throw this game out versus Houston, but
not
today.
I think that's always been like incorrectly stated for the Jaguars because everyone says it's only a 6% chance, like on 538. One, yeah. Doug Peterson doesn't know that, and 2, they can still win and then lose in week 18. That's all you need to know. Like, if you can give yourself even a small chance in week 18 to lose that game and sneak in, of course they're then playing to win this week. So I just thought always that was way overblown.
The counter to
it
that
always is anyways, man. We all get caught in the weeds in this stuff so much. I mean, even just, again, we're talking about the Vikings. Like, it's week 17. They have 2 games left. Like, these guys aren't going to be, like, outright sitting a lot of players. Like, it's just not happening.
All right, Jets versus Seahawks. Am I the first person to say? I'm sure I'm not. Geno Smith revenge game? Jets versus Seahawks, 42.5 is the total. Seahawks getting 2 points here at home. Mike White versus Geno. You struggled here, John, and understandably so. The board, we have 13 games, but it's quantity versus quality, right? But what can you sell me as far as Seattle and the Jets?
We can start with Mike White. Well, let's start with this game overall because, like, we could talk about Giants Colts, but none of us are playing Colts unless it's maybe Jelani Woods. We can't talk about Dolphins Patriots because I don't want to talk about the Patriots, especially like I could try to sell you on Ramondre Stevenson, but Stevenson also just murdered everyone in like classic Alexander Madison championship week style to the point where everyone is now disgusted of Ramondre Stevenson completely. So that's a hard sell. Chiefs Broncos, as we talked about, it's just a Jerry Jeudy game. We can't talk about Chiefs Broncos. So really you just ask what the hell else is a third game to talk about on this slate that might have some pushback. And although I still question what Seattle can do, because we tried to put Marquise Goodwin in Tyler Lockett's shoes last week, and we saw how that went. And DK Metcalf did get injured in that game. Otherwise, he was soaking up everything. But at least we know how the Jets run their offense with Mike White, because in his 3 starts earlier this year, 43 pass attempts per game, and they were in the top half of the league in pass play rate from neutral game script, basically just revolving all around him. And so now you look across these matchups, and we at least know, despite Seattle being a top team in defending receivers from the boundary, we know they moved Garrett Wilson enough around for it not to matter because 1, he's Garrett Wilson, and 2, he averaged 21.5 fantasy points with Mike White compared to just 8.8 with Zach Wilson this year. And then you look at the other matchups, and if Seattle is tough on the boundary and we need some cheapies in our lineup, everyone's trying to save salary here, I do think Elijah Moore is somewhat interesting. He had a 13% target share from Mike White earlier this year, but also Seattle's been burned for the second most touchdowns, 11, to wide receivers from the slot, where he's run 70% of his routes from week 12 on in between Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson. So I think there are at least quite a few options here for the Jets offense.
Jets still fighting to make the playoffs, 15% chance according to 538. Seattle as well. So 2 teams that have a shot to make the playoffs that aren't in just yet, 27% for Seattle. Rich, what side of this game appeals to you most? We're assuming, I guess, right now, at least projections, I believe, are that Lockett is in. If he's in, he's a good value. We don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. We're just Wednesday. But, you want to talk Seattle or you want to talk Jets?
I think, like Daigle said, I think this game is more like if you want to find an ancillary piece or 2 for salary, that is fine. I don't know how much ceiling potential there is in this game. I can't. What kind of ceiling does Garrett Wilson have? The Seahawks have allowed 100-yard receiver, and it came in week 1. I mean, they've allowed just 3 wide receiver scoring weeks all season. Like Elijah Moore, solid play from the slot, right? Like you can get salary and you can get there that way, but spike weeks, I don't see it for anybody in this game. I mean, you look at even the Seattle side, the Jets, they're allowing just 12.5 points per game to opposing wide receiver 1 targets in PPR leagues. They're not allowing any spike weeks at all either. Like it's really hard to say like this game is like a spot where someone's going to pop, right? And like be a tournament winner. I think you're more looking at like maybe like a Zonovan Knight bouncing back because they faced like 2 terrible game scripts and he doesn't run any pass routes, being in maybe a better situation against the Seattle team that's like been really kind of just thwarted against the run. You're looking to kind of go that route, but I don't see any ceiling potential for anybody in this game.
You have to play one player. You're not necessarily stacking it, but one player, is like an a la carte piece to do another lineup. Who would it be? Probably
more just based on his salary. And like Daigle said, just, if I can luck box into a touchdown or if I can have like a 6 for 60, like that's good. Like what I'm paying. So I would probably say him, maybe Noah Fant, but I think a lot of people will get there, especially if Lockett's out. And like I said, if any time a tight end starts to get popular, I'm immediately out. So
especially with Will Dissly already put on IR for the year, I'm sure people are going to play Fant.
I'm in before Colby Parkinson scores 2 touchdowns. That's going to happen for sure, right?
Big dude, man.
Yeah, he is a big boy. And he does get worked in. He's 2'5". Would you rather have Colby Parkinson or Alberto at 2'5"?
Parkinson, for sure, without a doubt. 100%.
Just one catch and he's in. He's already good to go. We got anything else here as far as this game? Like, we'll talk about favorite players, amongst the position, amongst the players that are not in the featured games. We'll do that in a second. Anything else here, John, Rich, before I move on?
Yeah, Tyler Conklin definitely live. Like we talked about the George Kittle spot on Thursday Night Football. Travis Kelce, 6 for 113, same spot last year. And I know Conklin's not Kelce or Kittle, but remember he averaged 6 targets, 13.5% target share from Mike White earlier this year. Only the Jaguars have allowed more yards per target than the Seahawks to tight ends. So I do think it's a good spot for Tyler Conklin. Everyone's kind of log jamming around the same tight ends.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Thrive Fantasy. You talked about it before. We're going to give some of our favorite picks amongst their prop selection. You got to pick 10 amongst the 20 for their big board, the contest we're going to be talking about. I believe it's $50K, $10K up top. They have, of course, all the other sports as well. If you just want to have 2 or 3 props, you can do it that way. Join in on the fantasy prop action this NFL season with Thrive Fantasy. Again, it's easy to play, no salary cap style. You don't have to worry about Albert O. Revolves around an over-under style player prop format where each prop has a fantasy score associated with the prop. The riskier the prop happens to be, the higher the fantasy score. You rack up the most points for your share of the prize pool. Use the promo code GRINDERS, GRINDERS, when you sign up for a deposit bonus up to $250, as well as free tickets. If you're not aware how the free tickets work, you deposit between $100 and $499. You get 2 free $20 contest tickets. You deposit $500 or more, you get 6 free $20 contest tickets. Producer Steve on the screen. If you guys are watching on YouTube, of course, John and Rich, take a peek there. Give us some of your favorite leans on a Wednesday night. Feel free to be as you want to be. John, you're batting first. What do you like? What's standing out for you?
I will start with 78.5 rush yards over for Saquon Barkley. You get the 20-point bumper. The Giants have to win this game in order to clinch a playoff berth. And it's just that the Colts, on the ground, is where they are getting murdered this year. They've allowed 11 rushing touchdowns in Jeff Saturday's 6 games alone. So big week for Barkley. I imagine he'll be chalked this week as well, knowing the Giants are going to alter their game plans to attack the Colts front 7. And then we're about to talk about the Dolphins offense. But I'm still on board with Tyreek Hill over 7.5 total receptions for that little 10-point bonus. I think it's still a pretty sneaky spot here for Bridgewater and company.
All right, Rich, see those picks, raise them. I see Aaron Rodgers, 245.5 passing yards. So theoretically, it should not be that hard against Minnesota, but we talked about his inability to pass for a lot of yards this year. You are getting 110 points for it, what it's worth. That one was kind of interesting to me. Some names on the board you want to cross out. Derek Carr, obviously, 2 expecting to play as well, but you just got to pick 10 of these.
Yeah, I think that's the 3rd week in a row they've had a quarterback that ended up being injured on here. So maybe Thrive is a jinx to a number of quarterbacks here. Because I think we had Kyler. I think there was someone last week too, and then 2 of this week.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but it just seems to work out that way for him. But Trevor Lawrence, again, expected to not be an issue. We talked about that before. Doug Peterson said that this game matters, so we're assuming they play that game straight up. Does the Niners play straight up this week? We'll see. Stay tuned on that against the Raiders. How much do they have to play? CMC 5.5 receptions. You get a little bit of juice on the over. Does that do anything for you?
It makes sense against the Raiders, who have allowed a bunch of receiving points to running backs. But again, you're counting on some game script, right, to get the 6 catches for a running back. Will there be enough juice to kind of get there? I kind of like Deshaun Watson not to throw an interception for a 40-point swing. I mean, the Commanders are 29th in the NFL in interceptions. So take a swing there. I kind of think Deshaun Watson's an interesting tournament play this week too, but I'll save it. It's rough in these streets.
Scroll down a little bit.
What about Hopkins? 62.5 receiving yards. He should get a quarterback upgrade this week with McCoy. Do we like the over for Hopkins?
Yeah, for even money, I'm fine with that because he can get 9 catches and still get the 62.5. The pop gun, the rifle, the BB gun of Colt McCoy. Judy to score a touchdown at plus 40. I mean, obviously he's not going to score 3 again, but we know the way to attack the Chiefs is with wide receiver play for production, so I don't mind that one either. Dalvin Cook over 80.5 rushing yards could be a spot.
Is that an under spot or an over spot? We talked about Minnesota not running the ball spectacularly.
Yeah, those are. I mean, it's rough. It's rough out here. Not a lot that I love.
they're giving you 110-point bumper on Cam Akers 2 touchdowns.
You need 2 touchdowns,
but it's 110 points.
You get 155 points if he scores 2 touchdowns. Like that's. And you really can't bet the under like you can, but like what's 45 points? That's not that useful, right? But you know, if you're feeling froggy, you want to be ambitious, you want to chase that Cam Akers game, I guess you can, but I don't feel great about it. All right, we gave that enough. Check out the promo code again. Is Grinders Thrive. You get yourself a nice sweet deposit bonus. Let's give our favorite plays position by position. Well, you want to talk about your Cleveland Browns there, Rich? Go for it. Talk about the Browns.
They're not my Browns. But I will say that for this spot, though, in particular, one, it's easily the softest spot that Watson's had since he's come back, and you know, tough matchups and playing in terrible weather, like that's probably going to be kind of alleviated here. Just high leverage spots are what's held them back, right? I mean, he's completed just 42% of his passes on third down. That's ahead of just Trace McSorley since he came back. 31.8% of his red zone passes have been complete. That's last in the NFL. 10% of his deep targets, also last in the NFL. The Browns also have 8 drop passes over that span, which is the 5th most in the NFL. So not a pretty good run out here, but Washington, by far the best, softest matchup that they've had. 7.1 yards per pass attempt. They're 30th in touchdown rate allowed. They are 26th in passing points allowed per attempt. They're also 23rd in rushing yardage allowed to opposing quarterbacks. So I do think at his price, it is kind of an interesting week and kind of like this jailbreak kind of setting we have for fantasy this week that I think that he's definitely, I'm going to build some stacks because you can run him back with Brian Robinson really easily. So I like kind of doing some Brown stacks here.
And to your point, it's also the landscape of this week's slate to where, you know, Patrick Mahomes, I guess, is the only one we're scared of. But even then,
yeah, Josh Allen and Burrow are on Monday night.
Yeah. So it's just kind of another week where, you know, we talked about golf, we talked about cheap quarterbacks. I think the build makes sense.
What about John the cheapies like a Minshew, assuming he draws the start when Daniel Jones coming off a nice game as well. Giants are still battling. I think there was another cheapie that was kind of sort of someone interesting, and I'm losing it. I can't find it for some reason.
Teddy Bridgewater?
Brock Purdy, is he kind of interesting?
Yeah, although Purdy's been more of a floor player, and they have blown out teams, so they haven't need to push him necessarily. But I don't know if we're expecting the Raiders, whose team total is now dropped all the way to 17 points, who are not only or lost in that Derek Carr benching, is that Josh McDaniel also said that veterans are going to take a step back so they can evaluate their younger players. I don't know if that means Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. I have no idea. Devontae Adams, anyways, who's seen 26% of targets. He hasn't been a top 50. He hasn't been a top 60 wide receiver his last 2 weeks since Renfro or Waller returned. Maybe that's not entirely due to Renfro and Waller being back, but like right now, it's bad news. So I just really don't have faith in Purdy being forced to push the ball back. Minshew, it is somewhat of a sneaky spot since the past 2 games, the Saints have performed better on defense, but they also played Deshaun Watson in that cold game and Desmond Ridder before that. Whereas before their bye, the month prior, like Brady reached 280 and 2 touchdowns, Garoppolo hit 220 and a touchdown. They were a little bit leaky before that. So Minshew's maybe sneaky. The Eagles also just allowed him to rear back and throw. Like Sanders has 21 carries, but Minshew's still had a 9.9 depth of target, which was 7th highest in the league. So they just let him chunk it downfield. But I still think Teddy Bridgewater is really interesting here because it's the same splits we talked about with Joe Burrow last week and the Patriots defense being susceptible in the red zone for 5 games in a row now. But more importantly, against above average quarterbacks, they've plummeted. They've been an entirely different defense that looks much better whenever they play Zach Wilson and Mitch Trubisky. Like Tua, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, they allowed 18 fantasy points per game, which on the year would be QB9, QB10, a QB1 in fantasy points. And we can then argue that Miami's system, which hasn't been run properly by Tua, who's failed in tough matchups the last month of the season, Miami's system is still better than the Patriots' defense. And so if we're just trying to bring along cheap quarterbacks anyways, we know the targets are only going to 2 players. It is Tyreek Hill with a 31% target share. It is Jalen Waddle with a 21% target share. The next closest is Trent Sherpa with a 9% target share. So it's just Tua double stacks without Tua against, in a soft spot, in my opinion, against the Patriots defense. So I like Bridgewater a lot.
Rich, running backs, you mentioned Robinson. Are we assuming Gibson doesn't go? He's got a couple body parts right now with a knee and a foot, did not practice on a Wednesday. We'll see. Stay tuned. Do you like Robinson either way? Even if
I don't think it matters. I mean, he's out-touched him 78-37 the past 4 games. And you saw last week, dude, against this is the most egregious game plan I may have seen in the NFL last week, what Washington did against the 49ers. I mean, they had a run-heavy game plan against the 49ers. And, like, it wasn't – Heineke threw for 9 yards per pass attempt in that game and got benched. He did make it – I mean, it was a bad interception he threw. But it was like literally the most ridiculous game plan I've ever seen on first down play calls by Washington. Like they were just running for a yard. They averaged 1.5 yards on first down runs and still were just running every single first down. They threw the ball in just 19% of their first down plays with Heineke in the game. And they averaged 1.5 yards per play. Like what the hell was that? But now you were getting Robinson as a home favorite against this Browns defense that still can be run on. So I do think that he's like a natural just bring back. And you don't have to play the whack-a-mole game because everyone's going to cite the Carson Wentz splits with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson's coming on. And hell, you can even throw Jahan Dotson in there if you want to run him back too. But to me, Brian Robinson's the pretty easy signal if you're going to try to get cute and play some Brown stacks like I will.
He's hitting optimals really, really hard right now. He's the 3rd guy in the optimals right now, 46%, just behind Connor and CMC. Right below him, Travis Etienne, Pacheco, Walker, Sanders, Fournette, for what it's worth. Some of the names that are being thrown out there on a Wednesday as far as optimals. Anybody else you want to throw out the conversation, or you want to yield to John?
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave some guys for him. I will say, obviously, James Conner, you can keep playing. He's just getting so many touches. We talked about Cam Akers. Etienne, too, I think is a great play. And then Tyler Algier, man, it's like everyone wrote about in the waiver wire article, like he's available in all these leagues. But I guess supposedly he is because everyone's checked out. But he's been an RB1 in each of his past 2 weeks. Among all running backs now in the NFL, they have 100 more carries this season. Algier's 1st in the NFL in EPA per carry, 7th in success rate per carry. And the Falcons have run the ball, like I said, on everybody. There have been just 3 games this season where an Atlanta running back's gotten 60% of the touches, and 2 of those 3 weeks have yielded an RB1 score. We're getting his home favorites against an Arizona team that's allowing 14.1 rushing points per game. They just faced the Saints and Ravens. So, I mean, it's a better matchup. He's really cheap. I think he's probably more of a better FanDuel play than DraftKings, but he is cheap enough on DraftKings where I think he is playable.
5-3 on DK, 6-7 on FanDuel, Algier. What do you have, John, as far as some of your favorite running backs? Feel free to double down or just add somebody else to the conversation.
Rich said he was leaving some for me, and then he took all the ones. He took all the ones I have written down. Algier will be chalk. I'll say that. So
he won't be chalk, man.
You don't think so? Like he's pretty cheap. Like,
Dean just said if Robinson's popping in the optimals almost 50%.
Okay.
As a home favorite against the Browns.
I mean, skinny stacking that game is so easy too because you can go DeAndre Hopkins. You can also go Drake London off of Algier if you want to go that way. So there are lots of ways to get unique with that game. It's interesting. You're just not playing the quarterback, so it's not really worth talking about beyond that.
Algier 9% on DK, 3% on FanDuel for what it's worth. But go ahead.
And then we already, as I talked about earlier, Barkley. I mean, it's just going to be so much running for Barkley here. And it's the Colts. We have no faith. Everyone watched Nick Foles play on Monday night. I don't need to dunk on him further because everyone's done it already.
You got anybody else to add? I'm going to let you start off receivers and steal all of the picks. But yeah,
I definitely have one he's not going to name.
Okay. Running back?
Will not support it.
Hold on. Receiver?
Yeah.
Well, you go first.
Well, I mean, my number one guy that I'm going to jam in is Mike Evans. Like, sure.
Not supporting, but talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mike Evans is seeing 9.2 targets per game over his past 9 games. He also is running into by far the best matchups he's had, and J.C. Horn's not going to play in this game again. Deontay Jackson, who was available in this game early in the season, has been out since week 10. He's not playing this game. Carolina allowing 8.4 yards per target to opposing boundary receivers. That's the lowest that Mike Evans has faced in a game since week 9. And when these teams played earlier in the season, he had 15 targets, 7. He caught 9 for 96. He dropped a 70-yard touchdown that he would have walked in on. Nobody's going to play Mike Evans. I'm a hammer Mike Evans. I might go 100% Mike Evans.
This is Martingale style, is it not? He's due.
Yeah. It's a must-win game. They're going to throw the football. I'm hammering Mike Evans this week. I'm like dropping my stamp on Mike Evans. My one time.
Will he be in the four-man? Is he
flag player?
Yeah. And I knew I don't think I can talk. I can scream to play Mike Evans. I'll drop some tweets, and nobody's going to play him.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, thanks. That's
nobody cares.
You move the needle, to some degree. It'll go from 3% to 7% or something. Who knows what it'll be? But
I'm no Evan Silva. I don't have the juice, man.
What do you have here, John? As far as some of your receivers, he left you a lot. Just took Evans.
He did, although I don't really have a lot of receivers here on the board because we talked about a lot of the high-priced guys already we're playing. As unlike when we talked about Isaiah Hodgins' matchup being better last week for the Giants, I think Richie James's matchup, if you can't afford Saquon Barkley, is the better one this week. The Colts from the slot have allowed the 8th most receiving yards per game. That, of course, is where Richie James plays. He also led the team in targets still. He just wasn't the one with the touchdown. We talked about that with Hodgins soaking up team highs in end zone targets the past month. Rashid Shaheed, I think, is still live here, especially if you are thinking the Eagles push back, because it's Shaheed who, even in the cold, had that 33% target share, 441 receiving, not much passing going on. Andy Dalton only had 15 dropbacks, so it's not like a lot was going to be done in that game. But with Kamara a little banged up, Chris Olave returned to practice Wednesday. Maybe he's limited. I think Shaheed can still get snuck in as a big play specialist with volume. And then I actually had Russell Gage over Mike Evans because the last 3 games, Russell Gage is tied with Evans and Godwin actually for 18 targets, 20% target share, has more red zone and end zone targets in that span than both of the other players.
Yeah, he's hurt though, and the routes just aren't there for Gage. I tried to get there for him. He seems very thin.
Did anybody? By the way, shout out to John. Last week you took a stand. You said Hodgins is the guy over Richie James.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. On this show, you said Hodgins is the guy, and ownership.
They all got there except for Slayton, man.
If Rich is flag planting Mike Evans, then week 17 is no better week for me to flag plant Richie James. So there you go. We're going back.
Go back to it. Brandon Cooks will be super popular on DraftKings, especially if people that play ETN. He came back and had a high target share. He still only has target. He's only beat 60 yards in 3 games this season, but at 4.8, he'll be popular. I think London will be popular. That's another more of, I think, cash game play. The Cardinals have they're another team. They've only had 100-yard receiver all season. They just don't give up a lot of spike weeks to wide receivers. So his price is just too cheap, though. It's amazing what happens when you actually have actual dropbacks, though, and those target shares can now turn into something.
I'm actually really excited, Rich, about your tournament lineups because Deshaun Watson, Brian Robinson, and Mike Evans is like you're either going to the top or you're getting scorched.
Happy New Year's, baby.
No middle for you this week.
Happy New Year's.
It's week 17, man. Live a little bit.
I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, happy New Year's. We're gonna wake up. We're gonna wake up in a stupor and watch some Commanders Browns.
Hell yeah.
I ain't watching that. I'm firing up Red Zone or Netflix. I don't know what my options are. Hey, in the chat, they're asking about stone minimum still. Are we chasing this Greg Dortch? Was that a product of, I guess, Brown might have been reprimanded to some degree. Also, he's kind of injured to some degree. Well, how real was Dortch last week? 11 targets. How much was that of their quarterback having the ability to throw the ball only like 7 yards? 3K on DK. Is that usable, John? Or is that just like 1 week and then we're moving on?
I believe the report was Marquise Brown was using his cell phone in a meeting, and that's why he was benched for the first half and only played 66% of snaps. But he still came off the bench and at least from Trace McSorley, the plan was to hammer whoever the slot was with targets because McSorley couldn't get to the ball to the boundary. Like DeAndre Hopkins had 1 catch on 10 targets. That wasn't happening, which is why it's the bounce back week if you're not playing James Conner, who's in an amazing spot, you are going back to Hopkins from Colt McCoy.
I will say, though, about Dortch, that role in the offense has kind of been the one constant that's been good. Like the slot role for the Cardinals has been amazing. They're second in the NFL in slot receptions. Only the Buccaneers are higher because Godwin gets 300 like just short bunny targets per game, it feels like. But whether it's been Dortch or Rondale Moore, like whenever they've kind of had one of these guys like in the lineup, they've been good. And Dortch, anytime they've got an extended run, has been really solid. It just, you're trying to use the crystal ball of like, is he actually going to be playing? Because for 2 weeks in a row, they played AJ Green over him. But he's been really good anytime they called upon. He's going to be an interesting guy, I think, in free agency to kind of see what happens. He's been really good.
And of course, the issue is that the 2 games before Marquise Brown got benched, he was running 68% of his routes from the slot. So that's why he was the guy for targets instead.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this wide receiver class in free agency is an absolute dud. So like DJ Shark, and like I'm talking to myself, I'm like, well, where's Greg Dortch gonna go?
I haven't looked ahead that far. Is that like it? Like who else? There's got to be somebody else.
Shark is by far the best available free agent wide receiver.
That's wild. I can't believe that's the case.
That entire 2019 class, everyone got re-signed. Like everyone got new deals.
What did Shark sign, like a 1-year deal?
Yeah, he need a 1 year. He need like a 1 year tenor.
Well, smart move by his agent or Shark, whoever thought of it. Like, I mean, as far as the competition, you don't have to be that pretty, but if you're the only option, right?
Oh yeah,
good for
money to spend out there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk. Speaking of not a lot of options, tight end. We talked about Hawkinson earlier in the show. You could spend up on Kittle, you could spend up on Kelsey, you could spend all the way down on the great Albert O and the Denver Broncos. John, I will let you go first as far as your favorite tight ends. Who do you want to?
Well, I mean, we've already talked about Tyler Conklin. If you're spending down, he's only 2,900 on DraftKings, which is pretty surprising. He may be touchdown or bust, but he has a higher ceiling with Mike White than that. Who the hell else do I have on my list? I guess you can keep going back to Evan Ingram in that middling range, 4,400, considering they literally concertedly scheme his targets for him. Like even in the rain on Thursday, he was practically one of the safest plays, knowing that they designed plays for him to get him one-on-one against linebackers since he's just the more athletic player. I have to talk about Daniel Bellinger every week since he played a season high in snaps, ran a season high in routes, and it didn't matter, but he's there if you want to go cheap. And then you can keep going back to Tyler Higbee because Baker Mayfield doesn't throw to anyone else. So there's that.
Rich, your thoughts as far as some tight ends? You got the scraps. Well, what's left for you?
Yeah, it's pretty gross out there. I think we'll end up seeing Fant be popular. Definitely we'll monitor the Kittle versus Hawkinson ownership towards the end of the week. I'll definitely be glued to that. I think Ingram is by far the best Jaguars pass catching play if you're going for a pass catcher in that direction. He had 10 targets against Houston earlier in the season too. Houston's absolutely awesome against slot receivers. Desmond King's been one of the better players this year. Christian Kirkland, I think, only caught 1 pass in that game earlier in the year against them. They shut down CeeDee Lamb a couple weeks ago. They've been really awesome against interior wide receivers. So I do think Ingram's probably the best Jaguars guy to play in that game. And then, listen, we'll try to catch some flop lag with Njoku too, right? Like his targets have been there. Like he's getting targeted on 21% of his routes from Watson, which is right on par with what he was getting from Jacoby Brissett. Played Baltimore in the cold the week last week. He probably should have had a touchdown. He dropped last week too. Him and Cooper both dropped touchdowns. Oh, DPJ dropped a touchdown in that game too. So they all spread the wealth. But we just seen, the George Kittle light up Washington. So we might, if we're going to do a run back with Watson, maybe we do Njoku instead of a wide receiver.
And the chat mentioned Jelani Woods, who I talked about earlier. He's now.
Yeah, if Granson don't play, fire it up.
He's seen 21.8% of Indy's targets in the 2 games that Granson has been out. Granson didn't practice at all last week, so we'll have to see if he's able to turn around for this week, which is hilarious considering Woods has literally just seen 5% of the team's targets in the games that Granson's played. They either only use him or do not use him at all.
We were talking about James Conner. Like his usage doesn't make any damn sense, right? Like we have a guy that's like historically broken down anytime he's gotten like any type of like big volume like this, and they're playing for nothing. And like he's just out here getting just touch on touch, man. It's wild.
After an extension,
free agent?
No,
No.
that's why I said I thought they might try to use some preservation because he's 10 million next year. Like he's on the team. So it's
That's
like,
weird.
why are you grinding him out?
Yeah, he signed till 2024, and like that's a good point. I don't know. Maybe they'll give him a reprieve next week, or maybe it just pop up this week and we just don't see it coming. But it is weird that why would you want to grind this guy into the ground when theoretically you're married to him the next 2 seasons? We're supposed to finish.
He's been a guy that like historically just hasn't stayed healthy, so it's like this would be the time to like see what Keontae Ingram has, right? But that's not happening at all on any level.
We also just got the news that the Titans are in fact resting pretty much all their starters on Thursday, which we kind of figured.
Do they have healthy guys left to sit besides Derrick Henry?
I don't know.
When everyone's like they're going to sit people, I'm like, well, who out there, man? Like who out there are they sitting?
Yeah, who are bad receivers that they're going to play? Like they got to rest and preserve like Robert Brooks and NWI.
Well, I think they have to play those guys because you have to try to get Malik Willis to do something, right? Like, and you're not going to trot Malik Willis out there with, Racy McMath, who Dean is still trying to figure out if he's a real player.
I still don't believe that's real. I need a proof of life from Racy.
You're gonna find out Thursday.
You're trying, like they have to try to coax something out of Malik Willis, not only for the offseason, but like to try to salvage this season. It's like, so like trotting Malik Willis out there with a bunch of just vagabonds, like seems not optimal, but hey, I understand not wanting to play Derrick Henry though.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense for basically their season on the line against Jacksonville week 18. It's the theme of the show. Teams or people are out there and their championship as far as season-long stuff. I know how much John loves answering start-sit questions on a Wednesday. We have a couple more before we hit the road and get out of here. John, I'll let you go first here as far as quarterback.
What?
Kel wants to know.
What are we doing? I have to answer start-sit? I thought we were getting a movie.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, let's knock this out first.
Movie's more important than start-sit. Okay, go ahead.
I've already teased it up. Dak or Goff? Who do you like, Dak or Goff this week? Yeah.
I actually, Cowboys have averaged 40 points per game since Dak returned from injury. And some of those are defensive scores, but you don't average 40 by accident. Having said that, it's such an ugly situation that I think I actually do go Goff now.
It feels safer, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it's torture if Dak goes off on Thursday. You already feel like you lost.
My problem with start-sits, Dean, is that it's situations like this, Dak or Goff, where if we had another year and we thought about it every minute of every day for that year, we wouldn't be able to decipher the fractional points. So when it's like the QB6 or QB7, I just tell everyone it doesn't matter. Just literally play one, because you're never going to figure it out.
You're talking about two guys that are split, and very rarely does fantasy games. We get caught in the weeds this all the time, but very rarely are actual fantasy games close, right? Like it's kind of an outlier. So like a lot of these decisions end up not being the decision that makes or breaks you. Hopefully that doesn't mean like Dak has 10 and Goff has 30 though, but
right.
Yeah.
I go Goff.
It feels like a game where like how much does Dak have to do, right? Against Tennessee, and they can just run the ball. Yeah.
But the thing is, we know they're not going to run the ball.
Dallas is not going to run the ball?
Yes. I mean, they're going to run the ball in the second half for carries and clock, but like you're not going to get over on the Titans with points by running the ball.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. Yeah.
And if Pollard ends up not playing, they're definitely not going to grind out Zeke for efficient drives.
That's why
travel for what it's worth.
That's what I'm kind of hoping, that Josh Jacobs just gets like scratched late and everyone goes to minimum Zamir White, because he's not going anywhere. The 49ers lot isn't going to budge for him, but everyone's going to play him.
Yeah.
You mentioned the movie, John. You won the movie contest last week. That's it. We gave you an hour and 15 minutes as far as analysis.
Hour 15, 6 hours earlier than normal. I think we did fine.
Yeah. If you don't want to hear us talk about movies for a few minutes, appreciate it. Thanks y'all watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Happy New Year. Let us know in the comments that want us to do this for playoffs, because that's kind of where we're at right now. We're probably going to do it, but it's also nice to get a little.
At least the first week we'll be here.
We're going to do it. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. If they say don't, if they all just say don't. No,
listen, the show is called Pick Six, and there's 6 games Wild Card Weekend. It's tailor made. We're back. We're here Wild Card Weekend.
I'm trying to manufacture some sort of like interaction. John, tell the people how you took down the 4-man last week.
I am pulling it up for producer Steve if he wants to jump on here right now and get it up. We talked about most of the plays, honestly. The Burrow doubles. Once I saw that both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were going to be quite low rostered. And I mix up. I sometimes just get lazy and play my tournament lineups in our 4-man, which also tells you I don't do well in the 4-man. So I'm not doing well in tournaments the last month too. But yeah, we did that. I ended up looking for cheap Chiefs running backs and just thought, okay, I can see a scenario where both players get there. So I'm actually just going to play both of them rather than trying to choose. And then Rich and we discussed the skinny stack possibilities around Washington, San Francisco. So Ayuk over Kittle, played Noah Fant cheap, thinking maybe Will Dissly's injured, but either way, Noah Fant was interesting against the Chiefs in a run back situation. And then, Dotson over McLaurin, just because that's what fit, honestly. And then the Texans, I like the Texans to win outright anyway that game since they've been playing better over the last month of the season. So it's just kind of a defense that I thought was pretty sneaky compared to the chalk that was going on.
How close was it? I forget. I feel like you ran by at least 10 points ahead of the field.
Well, me and Steve had Geno stacks, so
yeah.
Ish. Yeah. Are we going back to Geno
early?
And Fant wasn't a good play. He just got the touchdown.
He sucked out. Yeah, he sucked out.
Absolutely vultured that fourth quarter touchdown. I am very aware. Don't worry.
I always feel like this encouraged me to get weird. I was trying to make weird lineups. I think Steve, producer Steve, pushes me to want to make a weird play because we both played Noah Gray. I was so mad he played Noah Gray.
I didn't even see you played him too. Damn.
I was so pissed off he played Noah Gray.
50% own Noah Gray. Small sample size, but still, it's kind of weird. What did I miss? But Noah
he
Gray?
caught a pass the first play of the game, and I was so excited. And I was like, "Steve's got him too." No,
as good as Burrow was too. There were 12 points left on the board there. Like Jamar Chase had one. He should have caught in man coverage, and then
Irwin almost had a third.
Yeah, Burrow fingertips on Irwin. Like it should have landed perfectly.
Yeah, someone in the chat wrote about Jacoby, and I think Dean played Jacoby Myers and caught that Hail Mary.
I was betting on instant redemption, man. The redemption game for him. You got it right back. It was never a doubt.
That was a karma play for sure.
Yeah. On DraftKings, I played Aguilar just because it was 3,300. It was a cheap pivot off Richie James. And, of course, that's the game that Aguilar got put back on the bench for Kendrick Bourne, who looked awesome.
So nobody watched my movie this week. We're going to do a double feature next week just because of the time change. Kind of screw stuff up.
I was going to watch it during this time we're recording now, but we moved the show.
Yeah, so we'll talk about both movies next week. The Invisible Guest. If you guys want to play along at home, rent yourself The Invisible Guest. It's phenomenal. Anybody by chance watch it yet, or we kind of delayed it for everybody across the board?
I was going to watch it Tuesday night, but then I knew I'd forget it by the time we talk next week. So I'm saving it for over the weekend.
All right, John, are you going to be kind or are you going to turn heel on us? So what are you going to give us as far as a movie to watch? Theoretically, the rules are it's a movie you like. Have you debated? Do you have several options? What are you going to assign for homework for the three of us?
Unlike the three of you who are very kind souls,
no.
I am not giving options. Also because we have limited time, but I also want to get back because everyone usually suggests, if you look at the chat, if you look at Twitter, everyone suggests sports movies. And I think a lot of sports movies are kind of lame, honestly. What's the Notre Dame one? Brian's Song? Is that? No, that's the one.
Rudy?
That's Rudy.
Rudy's awful. Rocky is.
No, it's a good movie. Stop it.
Rocky is objectively terrible movie. But I think a fun one that everyone would have a great time with, and we could keep pivoting because Sideways was more of a serious but amazing movie. We had just an amazing artwork piece in Spider-Verse. My son
loved the picture, by the way. He was excited.
It was a great picture. Rich, by the way, everyone, because he showed us on Twitter, bought his son a photo from the Spider-Verse movie. It's incredible. So I think we should get to one of the greatest sports movies of all time. That is The Longest Yard remake with Adam Sandler.
Oh, no.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, Goldberg,
Nelly,
Burt Reynolds, Kevin Nash, Chris Rock, Michael Irvin. Nelly. I could keep going on and on and on. It is one of the greatest sports movies of all time.
It's not even the greatest sports movie named The Longest Yard.
It is absolutely the best version of The Longest Yard. And it's the most fun you'll have watching a sports movie.
Is it even the best Adam Sandler sports movie?
I haven't seen Hustle yet.
Happy Gilmore?
Happy Gilmore's better. But, the rules are the rules. And, you're the king of the castle this week. And
Yep.
We can't argue it.
I remember like the football game kind of being all right, like shot all right. Like they did okay with the football scenes.
It's not even Lawrence Taylor's. Isn't Lawrence Taylor in the movie too?
No.
I feel like he is, right? Am I wrong? It's like I'm confusing him in Any Given Sunday.
There is another.
That's Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember either. It's been a while since I've seen it.
He saws a car in half in Any Given Sunday.
That's a great football movie.
Maybe we should have watched Any Given Sunday, but that's too good. We need to go to the Longest Yard remake. Courtney Cox, Great Khali. I can keep going. It's the best cast you'll ever see in your life.
The Great Khali. That's right. He does make an appearance. He's like
the Great Khali is in that movie.
See,
now there are a lot of wrestlers in that movie.
Now you're interested.
Terry Crews is in it. I forgot about that.
Yep.
Hell yes, he is.
Yep.
Just the fact,
Bob Sapp.
Well, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil anything.
Joey Diaz. Okay. Tracy Morgan. I forget. I haven't seen it in a long time. A lot of great names. I'll give you that. Awesome cast.
It is stacked.
See?
Oh, Sandler's getting his boys always, man. They're always coming together when he calls on them.
Richie Small says he'd rather watch The Replacements again. Hell no. No. Follow the rules, Richie. We're watching The Longest Yard. Not the first version. That one's not good. Go to the remake with Adam Sandler. That's the assignment for this week.
I will Shane Falco negative talk here. I mean, how dare you besmirch The Replacements? And yes, Jerry Maguire was better too, but that's not John's goal to give us the best movie.
No.
I don't think.
And The Replacements was really good. Yes. Also,
it was fun.
If we were allowed TV assignments, I would assign everyone to go see Friday Night Lights immediately because it's one of the greatest TV shows ever created. And yeah, that's about it.
I've watched every episode of Friday Night Lights with the exception of the last episode of Friday Night Lights, which is the weird. I don't know why I did that, but that's what I did. I'll watch it one of these.
It's got a good series finale too.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing. It doesn't make any sense. Last Boy Scout, they're talking about in the chat. Is that the one where
David Wayans, Bruce Willis and David Wayans.
Yeah, and somebody's got a gun in the field. I feel is that spoiler?
Okay. Dude.
Little Giants is a classic. Don't get me started on the annexation of Puerto Rico, the most ridiculous defensive play of all time. Blue Chips was a classic. Yeah, shout out to Shaq and Penny Hardaway and Nick Nolte.
I think the greatest game ever played, the golf movie with Shia LaBeouf, is also really good, but it's like a seriously good sports movie.
Shia LaBeouf's in a good golf movie?
Yeah.
The greatest game ever played. Hell yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
I've never seen it.
It's a solid movie.
It's my favorite golf movie. I think Tin Cup is highly overrated. It's not that great.
That was an 8, right? Was the most memorable 8 or something like that? Is it a famous line from that movie? I haven't seen that in forever.
They're quite a bit. You got to let the big dog eat. He didn't shoot an 8. He shot like a 22 on the last hole or something like that, and was considered an American hero. That's the best part.
Yes.
Major League is the best sports movie, by the way.
That is.
Is it?
It is good.
Yes, it still holds up.
The answer for me, I believe it's Moneyball. I think Moneyball is the best sports movie of all time. How about that?
I think Moneyball's really good.
Yeah.
The book is really good.
I'm happy to see the meme come back, the Moneyball meme.
Which one? There's so many.
Well, this is the player. This is Scott Hatterberg, and I love the memes that people have gotten really good at those, and they are very enjoyable. No, Major League 2 is absolutely trash. Carlos will not stand for this.
Carlos,
excellent.
Back to the minors, the Buzz. Remember the Buzz?
That's Walter Goggins. Is back to the minors. He's the power hitter.
Is it? He's a power hitter in Major League.
He's the star. He's like the main star of the minor league team. That's it's like one of his first movie roles.
I had no idea. I know the guy from 24 is Pedro Serrano, right? The guy that sells his Allstate.
David Palmer.
The best is it number 2 or the minors where they tell the catcher they're sending him to AAA and he says the line. He says the line. They're sending me to Omaha and I don't even live there.
He can't throw a ball to second base, correct? And he's like
back to the pitcher,
I believe.
Yep.
He can't throw it back to the pitcher.
What about the Hernan Gomez movie? Yeah, that was good. The Sandler movie. I can't remember the title.
Yeah,
of it.
Hustle's good. You should watch Hustle.
I'll watch Hustle, but I won't watch it this week because we were watching The Longest Yard.
That's right.
And The Guest.
Yeah, Invisible
Guest feature for you guys. This will be fun. I want to win it this week. Maybe I'll get a real good sports movie as a redemption. But we'll see. I'm going to see your movie, John, and then raise you.
Great movie.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, Dean, let's get off here so you can see if UCF can come back.
Yeah, it's not looking good, is it? Yeah, they're down after 3. Okay, yeah, we've been on way too long. Appreciate it. Daigle, tell the people where they can find you.
At 4 for 4, and we are running a sale. Literally, corporate has made the sub $4.44 for the rest of the season. That's a lot of fours to say, but through the Super Bowl, with all of our DFS content, all of our betting content as well, all of the Discord content where I go in there and do chats for betting and DFS, literally $4.44. If you ask to start sit in this chat, get your ass over there and get a sub.
Rich?
Alan Reeves on Twitter, Sharp Football Analysis. You can see this show every Wednesday with my guys Daigle and Dean,
including the playoffs,
including Wild Card Weekend.
Pending a lot of likes and some positive talk in the conversation. We'll see. All right, that was Rich. For producer Steve, for John, for my UCF Knights, for Albert O, for the longest yard, for Giannis Antetokounmpo. This was the NFL Pick 6 show, Week 17. Good luck if you're playing season long. If this is a championship, take something down. Just win something in DFS. Championship every single week. That's it. That was the show. Get out of here. We're out of here. Holla.